Once, in a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived an old farmer named William. William had spent his entire life working the land, cultivating crops, and nurturing the earth. His farm was surrounded by towering mountains and thick forests, making it both a challenging and rewarding place to live. Despite the hardships of farming in such a rugged environment, William loved his work. He believed that the land was a living entity, one that needed care and respect to thrive. One year, however, the weather took a turn for the worse. Unseasonal storms ravaged the village, and the crops that had been the lifeblood of William's farm were destroyed. The rains were relentless, and the wind howled through the mountains, tearing up everything in its path. Trees were uprooted, homes were damaged, and the village was plunged into despair. William's farm was hit particularly hard. His crops were completely ruined, his barns were damaged, and his fields, once lush and green, were now a muddy mess. The old farmer was heartbroken. His entire year's work had been washed away in a matter of days, and the future looked bleak. One day, as William sat on the steps of his small cottage, staring out at the destruction, his young grandson James came to him. James was a curious and thoughtful boy, always eager to learn from his grandfather. "Grandfather," James asked, "why do you look so sad?" William sighed deeply and gestured toward the ruined fields. "Look at what has become of our farm, James. The storm has taken everything from us. All our hard work has been for nothing." James looked out at the farm, then back at his grandfather. "But grandfather, the storm is over now. Can't we plant new crops and rebuild?" William shook his head. "It's not that simple, my boy. The soil has been damaged, and it will take time to recover. The trees that once protected our fields have been uprooted, and it will be years before they grow back. We have lost more than just crops. We have lost the foundation of our farm." James was silent for a moment, thinking about his grandfather's words. Then, with the innocence and wisdom of youth, he asked, "But grandfather, isn't there anything we can do? Can't we find a way to make the farm strong again?" William looked at his grandson, seeing the hope and determination in his eyes. He couldn't bear to see the boy lose faith. So, despite his own doubts, he decided to share a story he had heard long ago, one that had inspired him in his youth. "James," William began, "let me tell you a story about a tree that was stronger than any storm, stronger than the winds, and stronger than the very earth it grew from." James's eyes lit up with interest. "Tell me, grandfather, I want to hear about this tree." William smiled and began his tale. "Many years ago, there was a mighty tree that stood alone on a hilltop. It was a beautiful tree with thick green leaves and strong, sturdy branches that stretched out toward the sky. This tree was different from the others in the forest below. It stood tall and proud, facing the elements head-on. The winds would howl and try to bend it, but the tree stood firm. The rains would pour down, trying to wash it away, but the tree's roots held fast to the earth. One day, a terrible storm, unlike any other, swept through the land. The wind roared with such force that even the trees in the forest below were uprooted and thrown to the ground. But the tree on the hilltop, despite being fully exposed to the fury of the storm, stood strong. It swayed and bent, but it did not break. When the storm finally passed, the tree was still standing. The forest below had been devastated, with trees lying scattered and broken. But the tree on the hilltop remained, its roots holding it firmly in place. The other trees, seeing the resilience of the tree on the hill, were amazed. They asked the tree, "How did you survive the storm?" We were protected by the forest, yet we were still uprooted. You were alone on the hilltop, facing the full force of the storm. How did you stay standing? The tree smiled and said, "It is true that I stood alone on this hill, with no other trees to shield me from the storm. But because I was alone, I learned to grow deep roots. I knew that I could not rely on others to protect me, so I made my roots strong and deep, reaching far into the earth. My strength comes not from the shelter of others, but from the connection I have with the earth below. The storm may have been powerful, but my roots were stronger." Don't forget to like and subscribe to get notified about new videos. James, William continued, "This tree teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes, life will throw storms our way, storms that will try to uproot us, to shake our foundations. But like the tree, we must grow strong roots. We must connect deeply with the earth, with our values, with our strength. The storm may take away our crops, our possessions, even our sense of security. But if we have strong roots, we will stand tall once the storm passes." James listened intently, absorbing his grandfather's words. "So, grandfather, are you saying that we need to grow our roots strong again?" William nodded. "Yes, James. We may have lost much, but we have not lost our strength. We will rebuild, we will plant new crops, and we will nurture the land once more. But this time, we will do it with deeper roots. We will learn from this storm and become stronger because of it." With renewed determination, James and William set to work. They began by clearing the fields, preparing the soil, and planting new seeds. They tended to the land with care and patience, and slowly the farm began to recover. The crops grew, the trees began to sprout again, and the village, inspired by the resilience of William and James, also started to rebuild. Years later, when the village had fully recovered and the farm was flourishing once more, James, now a young man, looked out at the fields and remembered his grandfather's story. The farm had become like the mighty tree on the hilltop, strong, resilient, and deeply rooted. And whenever a storm approached, James would smile and think, "Let the storm come. Our roots are deep, and we will stand tall." If you enjoyed my video, please like and subscribe.